A Viúva foi Vinga dos Assassinos do Marido, her Filme de Ação Dublado. Every morning, Joe would wake up early to prepare breakfast, and Maria would help him with small chores. They shared dreams, hopes, and plans for the future. Joe worked at a local business and was respected by many people for his honesty and kindness. People trusted him because he always tried to do the right thing, even when it was not easy. Maria admired him for that. She felt safe and happy with him. Life seemed simple, ordinary, but for Maria it was perfect. Their days were filled with small joys. On weekends, they would take walks through the park, visit local markets, or spend time with friends and neighbors. Joe often spoke about wanting to make the town a better place. He had noticed some unfair things happening in the town's businesses and some people acting dishonestly. While it was not his responsibility, Joe could not ignore it. Maria knew he had a strong sense of justice. She always supported him but sometimes worried that he could get involved in situations that might bring trouble. Joe, however, reassured her that he could handle anything as long as he stayed careful and smart. Maria trusted him completely. One evening, after returning from a long day at work, Joe told Maria he had discovered something important. He had found evidence that a few people in the town were involved in illegal activities. Maria listened carefully, her heart beating faster. She had always known Joe had courage, but she also knew that confronting such people could be dangerous. Joe assured her that he would handle it carefully. He promised her that everything would be okay and that he would protect their family. Maria smiled and tried to hide her worry, trusting his judgment and his careful nature. That night, Maria went to bed thinking about Joe's words. She hoped he would be safe. Early the next morning, she woke up to an unusual silence in the house. Joe was not in the kitchen preparing breakfast as he usually was. Maria called his name but received no answer. A sense of unease filled her chest. She walked through the rooms of the house, checking everywhere, but Joe was nowhere to be found. Her heart began to beat faster. Something felt wrong. Maria decided to check outside in the small garden, and then she noticed his jacket on a chair near the door. Something was missing. She felt a strange mix of fear and confusion. Joe, her loving husband, was gone. The hours that followed were full of worry and questions. Maria tried calling Joe on his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She went to the neighbors, hoping someone had seen him. Some neighbors mentioned that a few unfamiliar people had been seen near Joe's workplace the day before, acting suspiciously. Maria's mind raced. She tried to connect all the pieces, but nothing made sense. Fear slowly turned into anxiety. Maria could not imagine life without Joe. He was not only her husband but her best friend, her support, and her companion in every moment. The thought of losing him was unbearable. Soon, the authorities were informed. The police arrived to investigate Joe's disappearance. Maria explained everything she knew, including the people her husband had mentioned the day before. She was nervous but honest, providing every detail she could remember. The police promised to do their best, but they warned her that these kinds of cases could take time. Maria listened politely, but inside she felt a deep sense of helplessness. She wanted immediate answers. Every minute without news felt like an eternity. She prayed silently, hoping that Joe would come home safe and unharmed. Hours turned into a long, painful day. Maria could not eat, could not sleep, and could not stop thinking about Joe. Every sound made her heart jump. When evening came, a police officer came to the house with a grave expression. Maria's stomach sank. She tried to stay calm, but she could feel tears forming in her eyes. The officer spoke gently, explaining that Joe had been found, but the news was tragic. He had been killed. Maria felt as if the world had stopped. Her hands trembled, her legs felt weak, and she sank into a chair. The pain was overwhelming. She could not believe it. The man she loved, who had been her partner in life, was gone forever. For the next few days, Maria's life became a blur. she struggled to accept reality. Friends and relatives visited, offering comfort and support, but nothing could fill the emptiness she felt. Every object in the house reminded her of Joe. His coffee mug, his jacket, the little notes he left around the house, all were painful reminders of the life that had been cruelly taken away. Maria would sit for hours, holding his belongings, speaking to him as if he were still there. She cried not only for the loss but also for the unfairness of it all. Joe had been an honest man, a good man, and he did not deserve such a fate. Maria's heart was heavy with grief and sadness, but along with the grief, a new feeling began to grow inside her. It started as a small spark but quickly became stronger. Maria felt a need for justice. She did not want Joe's death to be meaningless. She wanted the people responsible to be held accountable. She knew that anger could consume her if she let it, but she also knew that her husband's memory deserved action. Maria decided that she would not remain passive. She would find a way to honor Joe by making sure that the truth came out, and the people who caused his death could not harm anyone else. It was a quiet determination, born from love and loss, and it gave her a sense of purpose in the middle of pain. Maria began to think carefully about what she could do. She realized she needed to understand the situation fully. She spent hours going through Joe's notes, looking at messages he had saved, and recalling conversations he had shared with her. She started making a list of people who might be involved, based on what Joe had said. Maria knew she had to be careful. Acting recklessly could put her in danger too, but she also knew that she could not wait for someone else to solve the problem. She had to take the first steps herself. The memory of Joe's smile and his kind words kept her strong. She promised herself that she would do everything she could to make things right. During this time, Maria also discovered a strength she did not know she had. She learned to stay calm under pressure, to focus on details, and to think strategically. She realized that grief, while painful, could be transformed into determination. Every day, she reminded herself of Joe's values and the life they had shared. She thought about how he would have faced the situation. This reflection gave her courage. Maria began to understand that her journey would not be easy, but it would be meaningful. The tragedy that had struck her life would not break her entirely. Instead, it would awaken a new side of her, one that was resilient, smart, and strong. Even though Maria's heart was heavy with loss, she started to find small moments of hope. She remembered Joe's laughter, the way he helped others, and the dreams they had shared. These memories became her fuel. They reminded her that her actions would not be just for revenge, but also to protect the community he loved and to honor the principles he stood for. Maria began to prepare herself mentally for the challenges ahead. She knew the road would be long and full of obstacles, but she also knew that she was not alone. Joe's love, the support of friends, and her own inner strength gave her the courage to move forward. As the days passed, Maria's sorrow became a mix of grief and quiet determination. She started planning how she could gather information, understand the situation better, and eventually bring justice. She realized that this process required patience, intelligence, and careful observation. Maria promised herself that she would not allow anger to cloud her judgment. Instead, she would be strategic, methodical, and patient. Every night she would sit by the window, thinking about Joe, remembering his words, and imagining the steps she would take to ensure that justice would prevail. The spark of determination in her heart grew stronger every day, preparing her for the journey ahead. Maria's life had changed forever in a single night. The pain of losing Joe was immense, but it also revealed her strength, courage, and sense of justice. She was no longer just a wife grieving. She was a woman who understood that action, careful thought, and determination could transform tragedy into purpose. This was the beginning of a journey that would test her limits, challenge her courage, and ultimately define who she was. And so, with a heavy heart but a determined spirit, Maria took her first quiet steps toward a path that would honor Joe's memory and confront the injustice that had shattered her life. In the days after Joe's death, Maria felt the heavy weight of grief pressing down on her. Each morning she would wake up hoping it was all a bad dream, only to be met with the harsh reality that he was gone. Her house, once filled with laughter and warmth, felt empty and quiet. She walked through the rooms, touching the things he had left behind, the coffee mug he always used, the notebook he carried, and even the small keychain he kept in his pocket. Each item reminded her of the life they had shared and the man she loved. Her heart ached with sadness, but slowly, a quiet determination began to grow within her. She realized that if she wanted to honor Joe's memory, she could not allow herself to be paralyzed by sorrow. Maria began to reflect deeply on what had happened. She remembered the conversations Joe had had with her about the suspicious people he had discovered in the town. He had always believed that the truth should be exposed, that dishonest actions should not go unnoticed, and that people who harmed others should face the consequences. Maria realized that this same spirit of justice now needed to guide her. She knew that simply crying over Joe's death would not bring him back, nor would it prevent further harm. She had to act, but carefully and wisely. She understood that this was not a matter of revenge alone. It was about bringing justice and protecting others from similar harm. At first, Maria felt unsure about what to do. The police were investigating Joe's death, but the process was slow and information was limited. Maria knew she could not rely entirely on others to uncover the truth. She decided that she needed to gather information herself, to understand the situation fully before taking any further steps. She started by reviewing everything Joe had left behind. His notebooks, emails, and messages became a source of guidance. She paid close attention to names, places, and details he had recorded. Maria made careful notes of her own, organizing the information in a way that helped her see patterns and connections. She began to piece together a picture of the people involved and the events leading to Joe's death. While doing this, Maria realized that she would need new skills to proceed effectively. She enrolled in courses that could help her understand investigation techniques and personal safety. She learned how to observe people without being noticed, how to document information accurately, and how to stay calm in stressful situations. Every new skill she acquired gave her more confidence. Maria discovered that she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. She had been an ordinary woman with a quiet life, but now she was becoming someone who could face challenges head-on. She felt empowered, not by anger but by purpose. Her love for Joe and her desire to see justice done fueled her determination. During this time, Maria also practiced controlling her emotions. She knew that acting impulsively could be dangerous. Every time she felt anger rising, she reminded herself to stay calm, to think clearly, and to focus on her plan. She created daily routines to keep her mind sharp and disciplined. She would wake up early, review her notes, and plan her day meticulously. Even simple actions, like observing the neighborhood or tracking the movements of suspicious individuals, became part of her preparation. Maria learned patience, understanding that careful planning was more powerful than impulsive action. She began to understand that real courage was not about rushing into danger, but about moving forward with clarity and focus. Maria's efforts were not limited to investigation and preparation. She also reached out quietly to trusted friends and acquaintances who might have information or insights. She listened carefully, asking questions in a way that did not raise suspicion. Some people were reluctant to speak, but others shared small details that helped Maria understand the bigger picture. She realized that the truth was often hidden in plain sight, and that careful listening and observation were just as important as research and planning. Maria's network of quiet helpers became an invaluable resource. Through these interactions, she began to see that her journey was not one she had to take completely alone. Even in sorrow, she found support and guidance. As the weeks went by, Maria began to feel a subtle change within herself. She was still grieving deeply, but the grief was now accompanied by resolve. She understood that justice was not something that could be rushed. Every small step she took, every detail she uncovered, was part of a larger path toward accountability. Maria started visualizing different scenarios and outcomes, thinking about the safest and most effective ways to proceed. She considered every action carefully, weighing the potential risks and benefits. This methodical approach gave her confidence. Maria realized that she was learning to see the world differently, through careful observation, patience, and strategic thinking. The woman who had once been overwhelmed by loss was now becoming someone who could confront difficult realities with courage. Maria's preparation was not only practical but also emotional. She spent time reflecting on Joe's values, the love they had shared, and the life they had built together. These reflections reminded her why she was pursuing justice, not for revenge, but to honor his memory and principles. She also began taking care of her physical and mental well-being. Simple routines like walking, stretching, and meditating helped her stay focused. Maria understood that her strength had to come from both her mind and body. She was becoming disciplined in ways she had never imagined, and this discipline would be crucial for the challenges ahead. Even as she prepared, Maria remained vigilant about the people she observed. She studied their habits, routines, and interactions. She noticed small details that others overlooked, a pattern of meetings, unusual behavior, or inconsistencies in stories. Maria recorded everything carefully, always maintaining discretion. She knew that one careless move could compromise her efforts or put her in danger. At the same time, she also learned to trust her intuition. There were moments when something felt wrong or out of place, and she paid attention to those feelings. This combination of careful observation and intuition became a key part of her approach. Through this process, Maria's perspective on life began to shift. She realized that strength was not about physical power or confrontation alone. True strength lay in patience, intelligence, and courage, the ability to face fear, plan carefully, and act with clarity. Maria also learned to embrace uncertainty, understanding that she could not control every outcome. She focused instead on what she could do, step by step, building a foundation for eventual justice. Every day, her determination grew stronger. She felt a sense of purpose that helped her endure the sadness and fear that remained. By the end of this period, Maria had become a very different person from the woman she had been before Joe's death. She was still deeply mourning, but she was also prepared for the journey ahead. Her grief had been transformed into focus, and her love for Joe had become a guiding force. She had acquired new skills, gathered valuable information, and learned to trust both her mind and instincts. Maria was ready to move forward, not recklessly, but with careful planning and determination. She understood that the path would be long and challenging, but she also knew that she was capable of facing it. The spark of purpose in her heart had become a flame, guiding her toward justice and resolution. Maria's story at this stage was one of transformation. From a grieving widow overwhelmed by loss, she had become a determined woman with a clear goal. Her love for Joe, her sense of justice, and her newly discovered inner strength were now driving her actions. She had learned patience, strategic thinking, and careful observation. She had built a network of quiet allies, acquired essential skills, and gained confidence in her ability to face challenges. Most importantly, she had transformed grief into purpose, preparing herself for the difficult but necessary journey that lay ahead. With resolve in her heart and clarity in her mind, Maria was ready to take the next steps toward uncovering the truth and bringing justice to honor Joe's memory. Maria had now entered a stage in her life where grief and determination existed side by side. Every morning she woke up with a sense of purpose, knowing that she had to prepare carefully before taking the next steps. She understood that justice was not something that could be rushed or forced. It required patience, observation, and intelligence. Maria began to dedicate her days to learning and planning. She knew that if she wanted to make a meaningful impact, she had to be strategic. She spent hours reviewing Joe's notes and messages, cross-referencing every piece of information he had collected. Every detail mattered, and Maria was determined to notice things that others might miss. One of the first things Maria realized was that she needed new skills. She enrolled in courses for personal safety, learning techniques to protect herself in different situations. She practiced being aware of her surroundings, noticing small details, and staying calm even in stressful moments. She also studied basic investigative methods, learning how to gather and record information carefully. Maria practiced following patterns, observing people without being detected, and keeping a detailed log of everything she noticed. She quickly discovered that these skills were not only useful for her mission, but also gave her a sense of confidence she had never experienced before. She was learning to trust her own judgment and abilities. Maria also focused on organizing the information she had. She created charts and lists, noting connections between people, places, and events. Each piece of information was a puzzle piece, and she was learning to see the bigger picture. She spent hours thinking through possible scenarios, imagining how different people might act, and considering how she could approach each situation safely. This process required patience, and sometimes it was frustrating. There were moments when Maria felt overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation. Yet she reminded herself that careful planning was far more effective than rushing into action. Every small step was progress toward the ultimate goal of justice. During this preparation, Maria also realized the importance of emotional control. She knew that anger could cloud her judgment and lead to mistakes. Whenever she felt frustration or fear rising, she would pause, take deep breaths, and refocus on her plan. She learned to separate emotion from action, understanding that clear thinking was more powerful than impulsive reactions. Maria also began to visualize success in her mind. She imagined the outcome she wanted, justice for Joe and accountability for those responsible. These visualizations strengthened her resolve and reminded her why she was doing what she was doing. Each day, she felt more capable and focused. Maria's preparation was not only about skills and planning, it was also about observation. She began to carefully watch the people who might have been involved in Joe's death. She noticed their routines, their movements, and their interactions with others. She paid attention to small details, such as who they met and when, and recorded everything in her notes. Maria learned to see patterns that others overlooked, understanding that careful observation could reveal hidden truths. She also practiced discretion, ensuring that no one suspected she was paying attention. Her ability to observe quietly and accurately became one of her most valuable tools. In addition to observation, Maria worked on building a network of allies. She reached out to people she could trust, gathering information in subtle ways. Some were friends or neighbors who had noticed unusual events, while others were colleagues who could provide insights. Maria listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and documented everything. She realized that collaboration, even quiet and discreet, could strengthen her understanding of the situation. She also understood the importance of trust. Sharing information with the wrong person could be dangerous, so she was careful about whom she confided in. Slowly, she built a small circle of reliable individuals who supported her efforts. As Maria continued her preparation, she also focused on developing patience and resilience. She understood that her mission would not be easy and that results would not come immediately. Some days were filled with small successes, like uncovering a useful piece of information, while others felt like setbacks. Maria learned to celebrate small victories and to remain calm when progress seemed slow. She reminded herself that real change and justice often take time, and that persistence was more important than speed. Each day, she became more disciplined, more focused, and more capable of handling challenges calmly and intelligently. Maria's journey also required careful planning of her movements. She practiced moving quietly, entering and exiting locations without drawing attention. She became familiar with the neighborhoods, streets, and routes that she needed to observe. Maria learned to anticipate potential risks and to think through different scenarios in advance. She understood that preparation was key to safety. Even when she felt tired or discouraged, she reminded herself that every detail mattered. The discipline she developed during this period became a foundation for the next phase of her journey. Another important aspect of Maria's preparation was maintaining her physical and mental well-being. She realized that she could not be effective if she was exhausted or emotionally fragile. She developed simple routines for exercise, healthy eating, and mental relaxation. Walking, stretching, and quiet meditation became daily habits. These routines helped her stay alert, focused, and resilient. Maria understood that self-care was not a luxury but a necessity. Her strength, both mental and physical, would be essential in the challenging work she was preparing for. Throughout this time, Maria's emotional journey was just as important as her practical preparation. She allowed herself to remember Joe, to think about the life they shared, and to honor his memory. These reflections provided motivation and reminded her of the values she was fighting to protect. Maria realized that her actions were not about vengeance in a destructive sense, but about justice, truth, and integrity. The memory of Joe's kindness, honesty, and courage guided her choices. She felt that by acting carefully and purposefully, she could honor him in the best possible way. By the end of this stage, Maria had transformed significantly. The woman who had once been overwhelmed by grief had become disciplined, strategic, and confident. She had learned to gather information, observe carefully, and plan effectively. She had developed emotional control, resilience, and patience. She had also built a network of allies and strengthened both her mind and body. Maria's preparation was complete in the sense that she was ready to move forward with intelligence, courage, and careful planning. She understood that the next phase would require action, but she was no longer afraid. She felt empowered by her skills, knowledge, and determination. Maria's transformation was not only about strategy and skills, but also about self-discovery. She had discovered strength she did not know she possessed. She had learned to trust her instincts, to think critically, and to approach problems methodically. Her grief, while still present, had become a source of motivation and clarity. She understood that justice required patience, discipline, and intelligence more than force or aggression. Maria had prepared herself for the challenges ahead, knowing that her careful planning and focus would guide her toward her goal. She was ready to take the next steps, confident in her ability to face obstacles and uncover the truth. Maria's story at this point was one of growth and transformation. From a grieving widow overwhelmed by loss, she had become a woman of courage, intelligence, and determination. She had gained skills, knowledge, and confidence, and had built a solid foundation for the next phase of her journey. Her love for Joe, combined with her sense of justice and her inner strength, guided her every action. She had learned patience, observation, and strategic thinking, and was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With determination in her heart and clarity in her mind, Maria was ready to move forward, continuing her journey toward justice and resolution. After months of careful preparation, Maria had reached a point where she felt ready to take action. She was no longer the grieving widow who had been paralyzed by sorrow. She was a determined woman with a plan and a purpose. Every day of preparation had strengthened her mind, her instincts, and her confidence. She had studied the routines of the people involved, gathered critical information, and practiced strategies to remain cautious and discreet. Maria knew that moving too quickly could put her at risk, so she planned her steps carefully. Her goal was not to act recklessly, but to ensure that justice would be served in the most effective and safe way possible. Maria began by reviewing all the notes she had made during her months of observation. She cross-referenced every detail Joe had recorded and every piece of information she had discovered herself. Names, dates, locations, and connections between people were carefully organized. She created diagrams to visualize relationships and possible outcomes. Maria understood that knowledge was her most powerful tool. The more she knew about the situation, the better she could make decisions. This detailed analysis allowed her to identify key individuals who had played a role in Joe's death or in the events leading up to it. She prioritized her actions based on the level of influence and responsibility of each person. Once Maria had a clear understanding of the situation, she began to approach it strategically. She did not act out of anger or impulsiveness. She acted with intelligence and focus. Her first step was to gather more evidence to support the information she already had. She quietly observed the movements of those involved, documented their routines, and looked for patterns that could reveal their activities. Maria learned to move without being noticed, blending into her surroundings while keeping careful watch. She discovered that patience and attentiveness often revealed more than confrontation ever could. Every observation added another piece to the puzzle, bringing her closer to her goal. Maria also understood the importance of timing. She knew that acting too early or too late could compromise her efforts. She waited for moments when her actions would have the most impact. This required careful planning and self-control. Maria spent hours thinking through possible scenarios, considering the reactions of the people involved, and planning her responses. She understood that her mission was about more than punishing wrongdoing. It was about ensuring that justice prevailed in a way that was safe and effective. Her meticulous planning reflected both her intelligence and her deep respect for Joe's memory. In addition to observation and planning, Maria began to gather support discreetly. She reached out to a few trusted friends who could provide guidance or information. She did not share unnecessary details but asked questions that helped her understand the situation more fully. These allies became quiet sources of support, offering insights that Maria might not have discovered on her own. She learned that teamwork, even in a subtle way, could strengthen her efforts. At the same time, Maria remained cautious about whom she trusted, understanding that even small mistakes could have serious consequences. Her ability to balance trust and discretion became a key element of her strategy. As Maria's confidence grew, she started to consider the best way to confront those responsible. She realized that confrontation did not have to be aggressive or violent. In many cases, knowledge and evidence were more powerful than threats or force. She developed strategies to expose the actions of the people involved in a way that would hold them accountable without putting herself in unnecessary danger. Maria understood that real power came from intelligence, careful planning, and calm execution. Her approach was guided by a combination of observation, preparation, and strategic thinking. During this stage, Maria also focused on strengthening her emotional resilience. She knew that even with careful planning, challenges and setbacks could arise. She practiced remaining calm under pressure, controlling her emotions and maintaining focus on her goals. She reminded herself that her actions were not about revenge in a destructive sense, but about bringing justice and preventing further harm. Each day of preparation reinforced her patience, courage, and determination. Maria's emotional growth became as important as her practical preparation, allowing her to face obstacles with clarity and confidence. Maria's efforts began to show results. Through careful observation and documentation, she uncovered connections and activities that had previously been hidden. She discovered patterns of behavior that revealed the involvement of key individuals in Joe's death. She carefully recorded these findings, creating a clear narrative that could be used to hold the responsible parties accountable. Maria understood that evidence and documentation were essential. Without clear records, her efforts could be dismissed or misunderstood. Her methodical approach ensured that she was ready to act decisively when the time came. With this preparation complete, Maria began to plan her first direct actions. She identified opportunities to use the information she had gathered to expose wrongdoing. This did not mean confrontation in the physical sense. It meant presenting facts, evidence, and observations in a way that made it impossible for the truth to be ignored. She considered each step carefully, thinking through possible outcomes and planning contingencies. Maria understood that patience and careful timing were crucial. Acting too soon could jeopardize her efforts, but waiting for the right moment could maximize her impact. Maria also learned to anticipate potential reactions. She considered how those involved might respond to exposure and developed strategies to minimize risk. She thought through every possible scenario, preparing herself for challenges and obstacles. This strategic thinking allowed her to remain calm and focused, even in tense situations. Maria understood that intelligence and planning were more effective than anger or force. Her ability to anticipate, analyze, and respond strategically became one of her greatest strengths. As Maria took these steps, she also maintained her daily routines and self-care. She continued to exercise, meditate, and maintain her health, understanding that her physical and mental well-being were essential for sustained effort. She balanced observation and planning with moments of reflection and rest, ensuring that she remained alert, focused, and resilient. Maria's discipline allowed her to operate effectively without becoming overwhelmed by stress or fatigue. She understood that a clear mind and steady resolve were essential for success. Through all of this, Maria's sense of purpose remained strong. She reminded herself that her actions were not only for Joe, but also for justice, integrity, and the protection of others. Each observation, each note, and each carefully planned step contributed to a larger goal. Maria's journey was no longer defined solely by grief. It was defined by determination, strategy, and a commitment to truth. She felt empowered by her knowledge, skills, and careful planning, knowing that she was prepared to confront the challenges ahead. By the end of this stage, Maria had become a highly capable and strategic individual. She had transformed from a grieving widow into a woman prepared to face challenges with intelligence, patience, and courage. Her careful observation, detailed documentation, strategic thinking, and emotional resilience had equipped her for the next phase. Maria was ready to take action, not recklessly, but with careful planning and focus. She understood that justice required more than anger. It required intelligence, patience, and determination. With these qualities, Maria was prepared to confront the people responsible for Joe's death and to bring the truth to light in a safe and effective way. Maria's story in this phase was one of empowerment and transformation. She had learned to combine her emotional strength with practical skills, using observation, analysis, and strategic planning to achieve her goals. She had built a foundation of knowledge, support, and resilience that would guide her through the difficult steps ahead. Her love for Joe, combined with her sense of justice and inner strength, gave her the courage to face challenges with confidence. With patience, careful planning, and unwavering determination, Maria was now ready to move forward, prepared to take the next steps toward justice and resolution. After months of careful preparation and observation, Maria finally reached the stage where she could take the steps needed to bring justice to those responsible for Joe's death. She had transformed from a grieving widow into a confident and strategic woman, guided by intelligence, patience, and determination. Her journey had been long and challenging, but Maria now understood that her efforts were about more than revenge. They were about truth, justice, and protecting the values she and Joe had believed in. Every decision she made was measured and thoughtful, ensuring that she acted safely and effectively. Maria began by reviewing all of the information and evidence she had gathered. Every note, every observation, and every connection she had recorded over the past months was now part of a clear plan. She knew who the key individuals were, what their patterns of behavior were, and how their actions had contributed to Joe's death. Maria understood that having clear, documented information was essential to her next steps. She also realized that patience and timing were critical. Acting too soon could compromise the process, but waiting for the right moment would allow her to achieve justice without unnecessary risk. With her plan in place, Maria started to approach the situation carefully. She did not intend to confront anyone violently or recklessly. Instead, she focused on exposing the truth in a way that could not be ignored. She discreetly shared her findings with the authorities and other trusted individuals who could help ensure accountability. She provided detailed documentation, explanations, and context, making it clear that the evidence pointed to the individuals responsible for Joe's death. Her careful and methodical approach made it difficult for anyone to dismiss her efforts. Maria understood that intelligence, preparation, and persistence were more powerful than anger or force. As her plan unfolded, Maria noticed changes in the people responsible. Some began to act nervously, aware that their actions could be exposed. She had anticipated this reaction and used it to her advantage, quietly observing and documenting their behavior. Every action they took was recorded and carefully analyzed. Maria's meticulous preparation allowed her to stay several steps ahead. She remained calm and focused, even as tension and uncertainty surrounded her. Her patience and strategic thinking ensured that she could respond effectively to any unexpected challenges. Throughout this phase, Maria also focused on maintaining her emotional strength. She reminded herself that her actions were guided by principles, not by anger or desire for revenge. She reflected on Joe's values, their life together, and the importance of integrity. These reflections strengthened her resolve and gave her the confidence to continue. Maria had learned that emotional control was just as important as practical skills. By staying calm and focused, she was able to act thoughtfully, ensuring that her efforts led to meaningful outcomes rather than impulsive decisions. Maria's careful efforts eventually began to yield results. The people responsible for Joe's death faced consequences for their actions. Some were held accountable through legal processes, while others were exposed publicly for their dishonest and harmful behavior. Maria's detailed documentation and strategic approach had made it impossible for their actions to go unnoticed. The justice she achieved was not about punishment for its own sake. It was about truth, accountability, and ensuring that others would be protected from harm. Maria felt a sense of fulfillment in knowing that her months of careful work had made a real difference. Even with these successes, Maria remained humble and focused on her goals. She understood that the journey was not over simply because the immediate threats had been addressed. There were still lessons to be learned and ways to continue honoring Joe's memory. She spent time reflecting on what she had achieved, the skills she had developed, and the resilience she had discovered within herself. Maria realized that her strength came not only from her intelligence and preparation, but also from her love for Joe and her commitment to justice. These guiding principles had carried her through the most difficult moments and would continue to guide her future decisions. As the immediate challenges were resolved, Maria began to rebuild her life. She found comfort in small routines, simple joys, and connections with supportive friends and family. She continued to honor Joe's memory by living with integrity, kindness, and purpose. Maria also began to share her experiences with others who faced difficult situations, offering guidance, support, and encouragement. She understood that her journey had transformed her, giving her insight into courage, resilience, and the importance of standing up for what is right. By helping others, she found a deeper sense of fulfillment and connection. Maria's journey was also a story of personal growth. Through the process of grief, preparation, and action, she discovered strengths she had never known she possessed. She had developed discipline, patience, strategic thinking, and emotional resilience. She had learned to navigate complex situations with intelligence and calmness. Most importantly, Maria had learned that even in the face of tragedy, it is possible to transform pain into purpose, grief into determination, and loss into a driving force for positive change. Her transformation was a testament to the power of human strength and perseverance. Despite the sorrow that remained, Maria found peace in knowing that she had honored Joe's memory in the best possible way. Her actions had ensured that justice was served and that the truth was revealed. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and immense emotional pain, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Maria understood that while Joe could not be brought back, his values and the life they had shared would continue to guide her. She had turned her grief into meaningful action, creating a legacy of courage, integrity, and determination. As Maria reflected on her journey, she realized that her experience had changed her perspective on life. She had learned that real strength is not measured by physical power or force, but by intelligence, patience, emotional control, and strategic thinking. She had learned that grief, while painful, can be transformed into motivation and purpose. Maria understood that challenges, when faced with courage and careful planning, can become opportunities for growth and empowerment. Her journey was no longer defined solely by loss. It was defined by resilience, determination, and the pursuit of justice. Maria's story ended not with revenge but with resolution, justice, and personal growth. She had faced the most difficult moments of her life, yet she had emerged stronger and wiser. Her careful preparation, strategic thinking, and unwavering commitment to truth had allowed her to achieve meaningful outcomes. She had honored Joe's memory by acting with integrity, intelligence, and courage. Maria's journey was a testament to the power of human resilience, the importance of patience and planning, and the strength that can be found even in the darkest times. Her life, though forever marked by loss, had been transformed into a story of hope, determination, and justice. Maria's final steps were about moving forward while keeping Joe's memory alive. She began to focus on her future, setting new goals and seeking ways to contribute positively to her community. She became more involved in local initiatives, helping those in need, and supporting efforts that promoted justice and fairness. Maria understood that her actions could inspire others to act with courage and integrity. She carried with her the lessons she had learned, the importance of preparation, observation, patience, emotional control, and strategic thinking. These lessons would guide her for the rest of her life. In the end, Maria's journey showed that even in the face of tragedy, it is possible to rise above grief and fear. By combining intelligence, careful planning, emotional resilience, and a commitment to justice, she was able to create meaningful change. Maria had not only sought justice for Joe, but had also discovered her own strength and potential. Her story was a testament to the human spirit's capacity to endure, adapt, and grow. She had transformed pain into purpose, loss into determination, and grief into a powerful force for good. Maria's journey was complete, not because the past was forgotten, but because she had learned to move forward with courage, wisdom, and hope.